I am the councillor presiding at this committee meeting. Firstly, we wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on, the Whadjuk Noongar people. We wish to acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of this city and this region. The Audit and Risk Committee meeting operates under terms of reference set by the Council. The meeting is governed by standing orders and a code of conduct. The meeting considers matters listed in the agenda and then makes a recommendation to the ordinary meeting of Council. If you have an interest in an item being considered by the committee at tonight's meeting, please be advised that a recommendation from the committee does not constitute a decision of the Council. If you have a question, nobody's here, so we would have public question time, but we don't have anyone, so we will carry on. Thank you. Attendance, apologies and leave of absence previously approved.
Through the chair, there are no apologies or leave of absences tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Public question time. As I said, I don't think that there's anyone here, so no questions. Any questions taken on notice at previous meeting?
Through the chair, no.
No. Excellent. Petitions and deputations, I have none.
Through the chair, no.
Excellent. Confirmation of minutes from previous meeting. So we have the minutes from the meeting held on the 21st of July. Could I please have a mover to move those minutes? Councillor Thomas, seconded Councillor Stallard. I'll put that to the vote. All of those in favour? Carried unanimously. I will now sign the minutes as published and circulated as true and accurate record of the proceedings. What's the date today? Oh, 1st of December. Day's almost over. Thank you. Okay. Announcements by the member presiding with the discussion. I have none. Matters for which the meeting may be closed. Councillors, you will note that there is item 9.3.1 referring to the internal audit report. That part is confidential. If you wish to discuss anything in there, then we will need to go behind closed doors. Disclosure of interests. I have none.
Through the chair, I have not received any.
Okay, excellent. So we will move on to point 9, reports to council. So we will welcome Andrew Zavitsanos from Crow in regards to our internal report. He's actually online. Oh. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Thomas?
Hi, you do other cities. Were the other cities not able to meet all the inspections as well due to COVID? Or so are we like average due to COVID, or did they manage it? Thank you.
Councillor Stallard?
Yes, thank you. Through the Chair. I see that we've indicated that we're looking at rotating the health officers every 4 years. Is that an adequate response in your opinion, or do you think we should be working on a shorter time frame?
James, who is the Acting Development Director. I'll just put that to you if you'd like to make any comments.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. Just to touch on that, Councillor Jeff Stallard, the recommendation for rotating the officers is actually every 2 years, and that would result in a minimum of roughly 4 inspections over that period per officer. So we agree 4 years would be too high, so we're suggesting that 2 years be the rotational period.
Councillors, are there any other questions? Thank you, Andrew. I think that there's no more questions. So we have a recommendation on page 13 to receive the details of the internal audit review conducted. Now,
Can I do a question to staff at all, please?
oh, sure.
Okay, thank you. Considering we've had such a turbulent year and for so many different reasons, including the re-employment of staff who've left and that, what sort of time frame do we anticipate it would take us to get back on top of where we were, where we should be in terms of inspections and monitoring and recording? And is there not a better system or a better way that we can record and have a notation or an action plan to say whether something's been done and ticked off or whatever? Is there something we can do to speed that up?
To the Acting Director.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So yes, Councillor Jeff Stallard. So currently we have improved, pardon me, from July. So we're currently sitting at around about 23% premises overdue. Certainly we want to get that number reduced significantly. Part of the recommendations is to include an action plan and strengthening KPIs, which will hold the officers accountable and will improve that number and hopefully not get that high overdue again.
Sorry, follow-up question. The other area I noted in reading through the document was that the recording of the cases and action planning them on the computer system where are we in that stage? I noticed we were progressing that, and I was just wondering, where are we now, where are we at, and how long before we've completed that aspect?
Yeah, so we use our existing corporate system, so that's Synergy for recording all of our health inspections. We use a Word document for our inspections out on site, and we're currently looking at other tools to help assist with that, such as Zoo Data or iAuditor. So similar with fire inspections, we're utilising an electronic system called Zoo Data, and that's just, they also do health inspections, and we'll be looking at similar tools.
Do one more follow-up, sorry, and then you can shut me up. I noticed that in the comments that came through, I believe it from the auditor, was that Synergy was not the most appropriate system for completing this. Have they got any ideas or any recommendations in how to fix it, or what would be better, what's appropriate in that department, or is that not a question directed there?
Through the chair, we are working on implementing a new system through our CRM. It's currently going through a tender process. Unfortunately, the manager of customer isn't here, so she knows all about that. But that will apparently update and upgrade all of our customer-facing systems come next year.
Councillors, any other questions? Okay, so yes, we've still got the recommendation. Would I have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Connor, seconded Councillor Giordano. I'll put that to the vote. All of those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much, Andrew, for your presentation, and we look forward to the next one. Turn it on now. We will move on to 9.1.2, the City of Kalamunda Risk Profile. Now, you've got a few attachments here, 9.1.2 and point 2, point 3 and point 4. Now, we're endorsing and noting, so we might just pause and go through each, the risk profile one by one, just to make it clear if anyone's got any questions about the risk profile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do note that Council was consulted in July on this. I had maybe wrongly had some expectation that we would be provided with a briefing and the final report before actually having to vote on it. I'm actually quite surprised by some of the profiling and the risk register that's come through, because it certainly doesn't seem to be reflective of what I'm seeing elsewhere, and I'm just wondering if it's required to be endorsed tonight, or whether we can have further discussions.
So through the chair, the risk profile and risk register is the composite from feedback of that July workshop. So if council tonight has a will to review those risks and believes that the ratings are not reflective or need to be modified, then that's council's decision. But where this has arrived from tonight was the output of the executive risk review and also the risk management workshop that was done on July, I believe the 19th, but it was certainly this year. And so that's where we've landed in terms of where we are. With respect to comparatives about reflection on other, I can't really comment other than we certainly benchmark against the Australian New Zealand risk data that comes out, and it's also framed around the Australian New Zealand risk management standard. And so if you have specific examples where you're seeing this to be inconsistent with other risks, then that's a conversation that should come to council.
Councillor Saul, you...
Yeah, just I think certainly the language around change to climate, which is probably the more diplomatic way of stating it, particularly in relation to fire, doesn't seem to be reflected in what I've seen in terms of pandemic. I didn't really see that reflected in here either. And given that fire is a massive issue for the city of Kalamunda, I was somewhat surprised by some of the rankings, and I would like to see the rationale around that, and I don't think that I have.
So are you suggesting that you want to defer this, or?
Yeah, there was an expectation from the July meeting that I had an expectation as a councillor that it would be brought back to us, and I would like to see the supporting documentation, which I don't appear to have, as to how these particular risks were assessed and the resulting report.
I could comment just on that. The assessment of the risks is based on the integrated risk management framework, which has a matrix of likelihood times consequence. So if you look at the first risk, number one, you'll see that it had a consequence being critical and a likelihood of almost certain. The matrix illustrates how those risks were derived, and that matrix is outlined in the integrated risk management plan, also adopted by council.
So just to respond to that, the fact that that bushfire could not be seen to be catastrophic, and that didn't seem to mention a higher rating, I find somewhat surprising.
So through the chair again, as I say, if it's council's wish to bring these back either in totality or individually to look at them, then obviously that's a decision of council. The risk assessment ultimately, as I say, doesn't solely look at likelihood and consequence, but that's the product assessment. But it looks at the existing controls that are in place, and by that it means what does the city do to mitigate risk? What does DFIS do to mitigate risk? What's our environment that's in place to mitigate risk? And so that's how those risk ratings are derived.
Oh no, I think it's picking up at ID number 14, that's the one. City fails to meet its requirements within emergency recovery phase of incidents due to inadequate processes. Last year's actions included emergency recovery, testing, monitoring, reviewing of disaster recovery plan and bushfire management plan, additional staff and additional training. So I think, if I recall, if we go back a few years, the bushfire was considered a high risk, but because we put more resources and more effort in it, that's how we can shift our risks into a lower, less less rating, and that's what tends to happen if you look over the years with this program. It's about, we all know that bushfire is a big risk, but this is more about, well, what are we doing to mitigate, to lessen that risk, and and therefore can we bring that risk rating down? So that's kind of how the system works. But if council are of a view to put it back up as a really high risk, then that's your prerogative.
Yeah. Councillor Sue.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just feel like based on the documentation that's been put forward to us tonight, I'm only seeing the tip of the iceberg. I'm not actually seeing the supporting documentation which underpins these particular risk profiles, which I think is critical for me to be able to endorse and note and adopt.
Madam Chair, what else can we add to this? If we do bring it back and go through another workshop, what else can we add to it other than what we've already done? Is there much that we can add?
So through the chair, you'd be re-workshopping the same risks. So you would say, okay, in this particular case, risk 14, what's the likelihood of this particular risk occurring? What's the consequence if it does occur? What sorts of controls has the city got in place that either mitigate the mitigate the consequence or reduce the likelihood of that risk. So it comes down to coming back, having another workshop, and council making a view as to whether or not you believe those risk ratings need to stay the same, be revised upwards or revised downwards. That's the process. That's risk management 31,000.
Okay, so Councillor Sewell,
Madam Chair, so I'd like to move the motion.
okay. What is the motion?
The recommendation, sorry.
Oh, right, okay.
I think Councillor Thomas.
Councillor
Would I
Thomas?
be able to make a comment rather than a question? Councillor Blair and I attended the Bushfire Awards morning on Sunday, and we listened to how well that group of volunteers is resource trained, and I think those are the things that bring our risk down, and also the controlled burns, etc. So I understand what Councillor Sewell is saying, but if she'd have gone to that thing, and I know you can't go to everything, it would have given you a lot of comfort that we are very well prepared for bushfires in and around the city. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Councillor Sewell?
So sorry, Madam Chair, just clarification. That was merely an example. I just think it's important, given that we were consulted, that it's brought back to council and actually discussed, and the supporting rationale is provided. These are critical things. Like I see also there's an appetite here for us to, in terms of risk, that we're prepared to make environmental sacrifices when it comes to community amenity and such. And I'm not quite sure if that is the current sentiment. And given that we have a whole range of pending policies around that, and given the very clear indications that we've been given from the community of late, well, in my opinion, it requires a further conversation.
Madam Chair, we've got a mover. I'm
Yes.
happy to second the motion.
Okay, all right, so then that means that the motion is, has been moved. So Councillor Sewell, it would be your prerogative to then debate against the motion if that's what you're wanting, is that correct? Yep.
I think I've already outlined my concerns around the endorsement, noting and adoption.
That's fine. I'll put it to Councillor O'Connor to open his discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, we have as an attachment the Integrated Risk Management Plan, which outlines the rationale and the process that we as an organisation, staff and council will engage in to develop the Strategic Risk Register and the Risk Appetite Statement. And the 3 attachments are a summation of all of that work. It's not so much opinion-based, but slightly more scientific than that. So it's our process that we've endorsed, and this is the result of that. And I think it's appropriate to endorse and note and adopt as the recommendation states. Thanks.
Councillor Georgina?
Madam Chair, look, I haven't got much more to add. Basically, I do agree with the Mayor with some of the work that our officers do and our volunteers out there. And look, there's always contrary debate on these things, what we do, whether we look at the risks, whether we actually do stuff on the ground that mitigates those risks. We don't see a lot of that stuff. But it's actually happening, and I know that we have got, and I would have to say that I'm hearing it all the time, that we've got the best volunteer fire brigade in the state and best resource, the city of Kalamunda. So, you know, that gives me some comfort, added with some of the stuff that we do in here too internally. I'm happy to proceed with the current format that we've got in front of us.
Okay, thank you. Would someone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Stallard?
Can I ask a question rather than speak on this one? Full of questions tonight. In this situation, my understanding was that the risk it taken slightly differently was that it's a prominent and a huge risk because we are rated very high as a fire danger area. If we feel that it's not quite adequate where we're at on the rankings, can we then come forward with a motion to increase that or change that at another time? Or does this stay for what period of time?
So through the chair, the risk profile and risk register comes back to council 6 monthly. And so there is that opportunity.
Would anyone else like to speak against the motion or for the motion? Otherwise, no? Okay. So just to be clear, we've got 4 recommendations as part of the whole recommendation on page 20 to endorse the risk profile, note the strategic risk register, note the risk appetite statement and adopt the integrated risk management plan. I'll put that to the vote. All of those in favour? Against? Gets carried. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, councillors. Now we have 9.2.1 with respect to the adoption of the annual financial report, and I'd just like to welcome, sorry I didn't welcome you earlier, should have done so, to Siraj and Patrick from the Office of the Auditor General. And would you like to come and give us an overview of the reports and your findings?
Right. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. In terms of the audit of the financial report for the 30 June 2020 year, probably what I'd like to do is in your packs, my understanding is you have a copy of our draft audit report. I'd probably like to just give you a quick summary of the audit process and where we're at, and then take any questions you may have. So in terms of the audit this year, our approach was similar to last year, where we do a 2-pronged approach. We do an interim audit, where we come and do a bit of work before the end of the financial year, just looking at some of your controls, both in your financial space and in your IT space. So as a result of that work, there was some management letter recommendations, findings, but no significant matters. That was on the financial side. The IT side of the audit, the recommendations for that are still being finalised at the moment and reviewed. The work's been reviewed. But what I can inform you is there is no significant findings coming out of that work. After year end, we obviously came down here to have a look at your financial statements. Again, they were prepared to a very good standard, had good work papers, and in addition to the interim audit as well, we had good cooperation from council staff to get the work done. So the position we're in is in your report. We've attached a recommended draft audit report, which is an unqualified audit report on your financial statements. So that's the front part of the audit report, which is the opinion. You'll see below the opinion there is a section called Emphasis of Matter, Basis of Accounting, and there's 2 paragraphs there. You'll actually see that in a lot of council audit reports this year. The reason for that is some regulations were changed, backdated to 30 June, and that resulted in certain accounting outcomes had to be done. And so that's just for information purposes. That's in there to help the reader. That doesn't affect your audit report, which we are recommending an unqualified one. Over the page, we have another section there is report on other legal and regulatory requirements. So what we do have in there, as in the previous year, we do have the adverse trend on the operating surplus ratio, but it's important to note we did not identify any non-compliance matters coming out of our work. So that's the work summarising the audit process, and we'd like to acknowledge and thank the cooperation of the council staff in terms of the audit. The reason the audit report is drafted at this stage is last week we did have an exit meeting, which is a standard meeting we had, which the mayor attended, just to close out the audit process for this year. Literally the day after that meeting, we received a complaint to our office in regards to the council in terms of an awarding of a contract, which we have then had to investigate and do additional work. So we've decided to do that as a consideration of this audit process. So we've had to get a lot of additional documents and supporting work. That's all been provided to us. My recommendation is still to go with the unqualified audit report and the to the Auditor General. So it's still draft because the Auditor General is still considering the information that we've collated. You would appreciate that came through quite suddenly after our exit meeting, and we had to get a lot of information at short notice, and we've compiled that, but we're still recommending an unqualified audit report, but that information is still being reviewed by Auditor General, and as you would appreciate, she may have some additional questions, etc., that we will have to work through with her. So my aim is to try and advise you of the audit outcome by this Friday. So, and I'm frantically working as hard as I can to get through that. So that's as much as I can advise you as of today. So that's the audit process in a nutshell. Before I take your question, Suraj, is there anything else you wanted to add regarding the audit?
That's pretty much it.
All right. So I'm happy to take your questions and comments. Oh, sorry, before I do that, if I may, just with regards to the earlier internal audit report that was tabled at this meeting, there is also a similar report that we have done available on our website, which was tabled in June 2020, where we looked at two entities in terms of regulation of two local government entities in WA in terms of their regulation of food safety. So I would encourage you to have a look at that report as well. That's available on our website. That may address your questions regarding or any other entities with similar findings, and we can see the statistics there on the inspections and the delays, etc. But we only looked at two entities given the COVID pandemic. So, sorry, yeah. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Patrick and Suraj. Were there any questions for the OAG? Councillor Thomas?
I had quite a few questions and you answered them all in your talk, so thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other questions? No? Okay, before we put this to the vote, I will just extend to our Director for some feedback as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So probably just in summation, I reference the fact that from the city's point of view, obtaining an unqualified audit opinion is always the goal, and we're delighted with that. The other point that I would draw your reference to relates to the city's financial health indicator, which we managed to score at 75, and it's up from 68 the previous year. And that's a departmental financial health benchmark of 70 is considered to be sound financial health, so it's a good result, and certainly is one that we've got to keep working hard. Also in relation to the city's, just to perhaps give a bit of perspective, so the city's got net assets of $533 million, so we're not a small bicky organisation. We were able to obtain an overall surplus position of 6.6 million and also maintain our reserves. So clearly, as Patrick mentioned, the focus will be on looking now at that one financial ratio that we need to respond on. And certainly we'll be working with Council in the new year at the strategic retreat to look at what levers we can pull in terms of getting that operating surplus ratio back in positive territory.
Thank you. Oh, question, Councillor Thomas?
In regard to that ratio, it seems strange to me that we are forced to do valuations on our properties, which puts the properties up, then our depreciation goes up, which affects this ratio. So I note in one of the 4 levers, if you like, on page 27, one of them is to undertake a review of depreciation rates. How can you do that? Can you give us a bit more information about that?
So through the chair, we get asset valuations done by the various classes of assets, and part of that is looking at the useful lives of those assets and then deriving a depreciation rate. It's fair to say that we've not had a really deep dive into all of our depreciation rates, not in the last couple of years. So there's always an opportunity to take a look at that. But bearing in mind, the city can't just turn around and say, well, guess what, from next year, we're going to change the useful lives of those assets because these 2 guys sitting over here are going to get really grumpy and we're going to get a qualified audit opinion and then I'm going to get yelled at. So it generally doesn't... So in seriousness, yeah, there's an opportunity certainly to always be looking at our depreciation rates, but in order to change them, you have to be able to produce bona fide evidence to satisfy these guys that what we're actually putting up is in fact fair and reasonable and meets the accounting standards.
Councillor Stella?
Yes, I'm here again. One of the ones I just wanted to say, I think on page 27, item 19, but it's on page 27 in the last sentence before number 20. Is that supposed to be 2021-22 budget? I just wondered if that was a typographical error in there. Okay, thank you. And the other one I was going to ask, I think you've already answered it. I believe we were anticipating a operating surplus ratio to be below. I think we were anticipating that, were we not? I think you've already given that as an outcome.
Yeah, it's not entirely unexpected.
Is there any other questions? No? Well, thank you. I will put this to the motion. I will actually seek a mover. I'll also highlight that the voting requirements actually say absolute majority. It's actually simple majority on page 29. So,
One more question, Madam Chair. So, in the instance where perhaps it's not approved by the Auditor General, what are the implications of us voting it through this evening?
Question for the governance, perhaps?
Sorry, are you saying if the Auditor General didn't approve the... well, it won't be a case of they won't approve. They'll still issue the audit opinion. It would just be if there are any findings in the audit opinion. Manager Governance might be able to help me there, but I would imagine we would simply need to...
No. We're accepting, the recommendation is to accept an annual financial report. That's not going to change by what we've heard tonight. The figures are the figures and they've been finalised.
Councillor Thomas? Oh, you're happy to move?
Seconded.
Sorry, was there a question, Councillor
Second.
Stallard? Oh, you're happy to second. Great. All right, well, we'll put that to the vote. All of those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your help and support, and look forward to hopefully getting the rest signed off. Thanks. Merry
Thanks,
Christmas.
guys.
Gosh, time's flying. Sorry, I felt like I was missing something. So items 10, 11, we have no motions. Any questions? No. We will close the meeting to the public then at 7:12. Thank you.